guys, you're listening to In the Books. We're a period drama podcast and we're your hosts.
I'm Michelle. I live in the States. You can find me at Musings on Instagram and Twitter.
And I'm Rita. I live in England and I'm at Annoying Rita on Instagram and Twitter.
And welcome to the 6th and final episode in our series of podcasts on the Empress, otherwise known as Die Kaiserin. This week's episode was, and I loved this title because all of the other ones were like, the shoes, the wedding, the this, the that. And then this week's episode, the God who us has freedom sent. And it was pretty epic.
Should have just been called the God if we were going by.
I know. But yeah, this was an epic episode. So let's get started.
Okay, the episode began with a bird cry on a misty morning in Bayern, and you know I had to point out the bird cry.
Of course.
Because I screamed. Okay, Elizabeth's father emerges from a shooting expedition clutching a letter from his daughter. In the letter, she tells him he was wrong to claim she wouldn't be able to be herself at court. She's having the time of her life. We then see her partying it on up in Max's room, drinking and giggling with her friends. Her father then writes back, reminding her of the poem she wrote at the start of the season. He tells her that she wanted to find a meaningful path for herself, but she's clearly failed to achieve that if her partying is anything to go by. Elizabeth climbs up on one of her drunken friend's shoulders and falls to the ground in a massive heap. After a dramatic fake out where she makes everyone think she's collapsed, she bursts into hysterical drunk giggles. Now, if that's not one gigantic metaphor for the following episode, then I don't know what is. After the very pretty credits, Elizabeth does a drunk walk of shame from Max's apartment back to her own. Franz is already finishing breakfast and getting pitying looks from his butler when Elizabeth stumbles into the room, giggling, just bumping into household objects. Franz hands her a letter from her father, but Elizabeth isn't very interested in reading it. He then asks her if she enjoyed herself last night, and she lies about being with the girls. He tells her that he knows she's been unhappy since the Foundry incident, so he has a surprise for her.
Meanwhile, Max has another secret meeting with one of the cabinet ministers who informs him that Franz's deployment of troops seems to have intimidated the Russian Tsar. There are rumors they will soon retreat, and if that happens, then they will lose their timing with the coup. He urges Max to finally secure Sophie's backing. Their men will be there in a half an hour to apprehend Franz. Max looks a bit worried, but agrees to go ahead. Outside the palace, Franz is showing Elizabeth his surprise. It's a horse. Honestly, the perfect gift for her. As Elizabeth approaches her new horse, which is freaking beautiful, Franz cracks a truly awful dad joke that makes her giggle despite herself. It cracks the ice, and he tells her that he wants to see her tonight so they can finally spend some alone time together. Elizabeth pulls him in for a hug. Bask in this moment, guys, because it's all downhill from here. Seriously. As she is petting her new horsey companion, her lady's maid, Amalia, approaches her and tells her there is something incredibly suspicious about that Countess Apafi. Elizabeth is beyond annoyed that Amalia is trying to slander her new bestie and cuts her off mid-sentence, telling her she will not tolerate any further.
Decisions were made.
Yes.
Meanwhile, Ava/fake Leontine meets up with her revolutionary boyfriend Egon in the palace gardens to tell him she's buried a knife in the East Wing gardens and that he's to use it to kill Franz after sunset tonight. He asks her why she doesn't handle it herself, but Ava insists she's not a killer. Note that Egon is dubious about her commitment to Sparkle Motion, the revolution. So she tells him that while she's had doubts in the past, she knows now that they all have to die. Egon asks her if she means the Empress too, and the teary-eyed Ava agrees, yes, her too. Egon then agrees to take care of her, and with one last hug goodbye, they both go on their ways. And by the way, I instantly knew what Ava had done. It was so obvious. Might be the Slytherin in me. Franz enters his study to find Alexander von Bach waiting for him. Von Bach shows him all the people amassing outside the gates. Franz's response is to shut the curtains and ignore the problem. Classic avoidance technique.
La 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 la.
What people? Franz tells von Bach that this is a matter for the palace guards, aka shut up. Anyway, his former pal is there to ask about how things went with the polar bear chick, and Franz tells him that the Countess's good word comes with strings attached, and when von Bach urges him to consider it anyway, Franz is like, please leave me the fuck alone. So no pimping today, thank you very much.
Well, he's saving himself for his missus. Anyway, Franz then goes to the window to watch as the people continue to amass. Sophie enters and tells him they need to do something about Elizabeth. The incident at the foundry was one thing, but now the court tongues are wagging about her partying with Max all night. She says, you married a spoiled child, and that weakens you as emperor. You need to command some respect. Franz is annoyed, but she tells him that something has to change, and if he doesn't do it, she will. Elizabeth tries to ride her new horse around the palace gardens, but it seems like every path she takes has a guard stationed in it, forbidding her from going further on the orders of the Archduchess. Elizabeth grows more and more distressed until she is hemmed into a corner looking for an escape. That's when a footman arrives with a message that Sophie has asked to speak with her. Elizabeth finds Sophie in the palace ornate chapel. Sophie asks her what she thinks the most important virtue in a ruler is. Elizabeth says it's empathy, although she assumes Sophie doesn't agree with her. Sophie responds by telling her about her daughter Anna's epilepsy. Her attack started when she was 3 and got more and more severe. The doctor's treatment for her was to shave off all her hair and drain her blood by putting leeches on her head. Oh, little Anna grew more and more distressed, and she screamed so much that Sophie stopped the treatment and sent away the doctors. 4 days later, her daughter was dead. That taught her you have to cut the sickness right out, even if it hurts. Elizabeth asks her what she needs to cut out, but she surely knows the answer to that question, as we all do. Sophie explains that Franz needs a wife to support him as an empress and to wear the crown with zeal, and that's not Elizabeth. So she has 2 options. She can go back to Bayern and annul the marriage, or she can stay and abide by their rules, which now entails being locked up in the north wing of the palace with the matron. No horse riding, no all-night ragers, and no ladies for company. Elizabeth is like, Franz would never agree to this, so Sophie lies and says he already has. She asks Elizabeth to take time to consider this. In the distance, a bell tolls.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Sophie enters her room and finds Matron and Marguerite waiting for her. She announces to Matron that she has failed to deal with Elizabeth, and as such, she is being demoted. Should the Empress decide to stay, then her one responsibility will be to stay by her side like a guard dog. Marguerite will replace her role in court, and if the Empress should decide to return to Bayern, Matron will accompany her. Matron's horrified at the suggestion and literally whimpers, "Don't send me to Bayern!" She then prostrates herself before Sophie in a pathetic sight, and Sophie tells her to leave.
Yeah.
As she does, Max enters the room. Sophie makes him fetch her some water for the headache that she's starting to get from dealing with all this bullshit. And as he is mid-pour, she asks him what game he is playing. Because mothers always know when you're up to some fuckery.
Yes.
Sophie asks him to cut to the chase, so he does. He argues that Napoleon and Queen Victoria laugh at them, and the Prussians are at their heels. They need to preserve their power and empire, and he just happens to be the most popular member of the family with the population. Sophie scoffs popularity is overrated. Max persists and tells her he has the support. Sophie stops him. Support for what exactly? Committing high treason to get himself hanged, maybe?
Elizabeth tries to see Franz, but is stopped at the door by Theo. Franz is not busy, but he is channeling his anxious energy into practicing his swordsmanship, not a euphemism, and so doesn't talk to Elizabeth. Instead, Elizabeth heads for her room, where she begins to feel faint. Who should find her at this literal moment of weakness? Max, of course. Of course. She tells him his mother is trying to get rid of her, and he then explains that a change is coming, and no matter what, he wants her by his side. Big, giant, red flags flying all over the place there, Elizabeth. But to be fair, she is still looking faint and confused, like she can't follow the conversation. But then he tells her that he and her were always meant to be together, and they grab onto each other's faces, and she leans in, and they kiss.
Don't love it. Don't love it.
I know. When Elizabeth realizes what she's done, which is kiss her brother-in-law, so gross, she pushes him away and yells at him to get out.
I suppose one cousin is as good as the other.
Yeah. Max then makes his way to Franz's study and announces that he has lost control, that Franz has lost control. Franz asks him if he wants to rule and then laughs at him. He tells Max that he has no idea what ruling is like. To bear the weight alone, forever, and not set it down. Franz then hysterically screams, "This is my birthright!" Which is, like, okay.
Okay, my man.
Yeah. Max looks increasingly upset and scared, but still soldiers on with his speech about how the army and church are behind him, and also Franz's wife. Yes, Max lies and tells Franz that Elizabeth has thrown her support behind him, and then implies he slept with her. Franz punches him in the face so hard, Max looks like he almost falls over. I mean,
loved it.
That was a punch.
I did an air punch. I was like, yes, in his face.
Yes.
Okay.
Then Max accuses Franz of stealing Elizabeth away from him. And Franz is like, enough of this shit. Get out of here before I have you hanged. Which is fair. That's fair.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ava/fake Leontine finds Elizabeth sulking on her bed and asks her if she's eaten anything. Elizabeth remarks that she hasn't been able to keep anything down for days, which instantly sets off fake Leontine's spidey senses. She checks the calendar and realizes Elizabeth's missed her period. To be certain, she examines her breasts. And they're firm, and fake Leontine pronounces she is certain that Elizabeth is pregnant. Elizabeth is emotional, but pleased. Meanwhile, Amalia locates members of the Apafi family living in Vienna and asks them for all correspondence or photos of the real Leontine. She receives a series of photos in return. When she looks through them, she recognizes Ava/fake Leontine is in one of them as a nursemaid to the family and gasps. She immediately seeks out matron, but learns that she has been demoted. So instead, she decides she needs to speak to Archduchess Sophie in person and tries to hide her photos from the other ladies in waiting. Elizabeth hurries back to Franz's study to share the news of the pregnancy, but he's busy giving orders to try and control the whole Max situation, and when he sees her, he is livid. He accuses her of scheming behind his back and tells her she is never to see his brother again. I'm on board with that personally. Let's have no more
definitely.
of that. Elizabeth tells him that nothing is going on and that she only loves him. Franz crumples and reaches out for her hand, and just when you think they might reconcile, Franz pulls out the truly heartbreaking line. Why then is that not enough? Elizabeth assumes that it's because his mother wants her gone, and she tells him about what happened earlier. She asks if he knew about it, and he says he didn't, but he agrees with Sophie that things can't go on like this anymore. Elizabeth feels stifled by life at court, and he can't have an empress that creeps about in the dark and puts herself in danger constantly. Elizabeth complains that if he wanted someone content to be locked up, he should have married Elena. Franz agrees, which visibly crushes her. Mm-hmm. She tells him she is leaving for Bayern then. Better a mad woman of Posthofen than one more day here as Empress, which is so dramatic.
Yeah, preach it, sister. Sophie and von Bach meet with the head of the gendarmerie, and he explains there are over 300 people amassing at the main gate alone and more around the palace. Franz saunters in and says he wants 100 armed guards at the gate. Von Bach is horrified and points out that they are mostly poor and unarmed. Franz ignores him and tells Kemper that if anyone so much as twitches, he has orders to shoot. Fair to say, he is not handling the breakup very well then.
Nope.
He then announces Elizabeth's decision to his mother. Sophie tells him that it was a beautiful dream, but everyone has to wake up in the end, which leaves Franz looking low-key haunted and regretful. Elizabeth packs to leave. She tells fake Leontine to save one of her dresses for little Ludwig, and then offers her a huge diamond necklace. Fake Leontine is more concerned that Elizabeth didn't tell Franz about the baby. Elizabeth pulls out the corn doll she found on the first day at court. Fake Leontine grabs it and lights it, telling her that it's not about her. The people burn these dolls as a cry for help. If you want to help, then you must stay. It's now nighttime, and Egon is wandering out in the gardens, dressed in a footman's garb. He digs up the knife and makes his way towards the palace. Meanwhile, we see his girlfriend Ava approach Theo outside Franz's office. He asks what he can do for her.
Elsewhere, Max is told by a cabinet minister that the Russian army has retreated. Franz's plan was a success.
Yes.
Max is fucked.
Yes.
But instead of admitting his defeat and that his time to move has passed, he decides to act immediately while everyone else remains ignorant of Franz's win. He barges into his mother's room. Sophie's lounging around while little Ludwig is playing with her various earrings. She blithely explains to her youngest son that Max wants to be emperor now. But after spending her life in the shadow of weak men, she knows that he's not fit. None of her sons are. She goes full Disney villain and declares she won't let any of them destroy what she's built. Ludwig and Max look crushed as she sashays out of the room.
Yeah.
Elizabeth leaves the palace in her most glamorous puffy dress yet. I mean, that's the dress you choose to leave in. Anyway, Sophie comes to bid her adieu and patronizingly tells her it's important to recognize one's own fatalities in life, Elizabeth. Elizabeth gives her a knowing smirk and leaves for her carriage. Upstairs, Theo hands a distraught-looking Franz the horsehair bracelet Elizabeth gave him in episode 1 as a not-too-subtle suggestion to not let his wife go. Outside, Egon is caught sneaking into the building by like a dozen armed guards. He realizes he's been set up and starts laughing to himself. He shouts out "Revolution" as they begin firing into him. In her room, a heartbroken Ava hears the gunshots and begins to sob. Franz also hears the shots and looks outside in confusion, like no one told him? Like there's a whole assassination attempt. Like maybe tell him.
Elizabeth is crying in her carriage and holding the burnt husk of the corn doll as she approaches the palace gates. The head of the gendarmerie stops the carriage and tells Elizabeth to turn around. It's much too dangerous for anyone to leave while there are hundreds of people at the gates. Elizabeth loses her shit and screams at him, so he finally bows to her authority. As she heads back into the coach, she hears a baby cry from the crowd and stops. Inside, Ava is lying stricken on the floor of her chamber when the revolutionary-minded maid that she's been talking to all season enters. She tells Ava she knows she betrayed Egon and that if she ever goes back to Vienna, she will be killed. which leaves Ava fucked really because she is also in danger of being discovered by Amalia any minute now. Fellow lady-in-waiting Charlotte then enters the room and tells her Amalia has pictures of her, which obviously freaks Ava out. She goes looking for Amalia and finds her holding the blood-soaked dress Leontine was wearing when she was killed. Ava starts chasing her around the palace, and eventually she corners her in the grand staircase. Amalia accuses her of assuming Leontine's identity and threatening to destroy the whole court. She also calls Ava vile scum, which leads to her getting pushed off a very high balcony. Whoopsies! Looks like Ava is a murderer after all now, isn't she? Unfortunately for Ava, the whole encounter was seen by fellow lady-in-waiting Charlotte.
Another whoopsie. A whoopsie times 2.
A whoopsie daisy, yes.
Meanwhile, Franz has made it outside and runs towards the gates when he sees Elizabeth slowly making her way into the crowd of torch-wielding peasants. And the word slowly is emphasized here, very slowly. Instead of reacting with violence, they all move out of her way and start taking off their hats as a show of respect. She tells them she sees them and then drops into a deep curtsy. Back in the palace, Theo enters Max's room with some soldiers and asks His Imperial Highness to follow him. Thank God.
Yeah.
We then cut to Ludwig's room. He's wearing the dress Elizabeth set aside for him. We then cut to Sophie. One of her footmen enters and tells her that Elizabeth has informed the crowd that she's with child. Sophie looks shocked and then tells him this is wonderful news in the tone of a woman who just found out her favourite pet has died. Back outside, Elizabeth is breaking one of the cardinal rules and has started to shake the hands of these dirty peasants. Franz asks the guards to unlock the gates and so he can follow her. We then get an extreme close-up of Elizabeth's enlightened face as the show fades to black. The end. And then I was like, that's it?
You can't just leave us here? No!
What kind of an ending was that? I screamed. Can you imagine if we hadn't got season 2? That would have been the end. I would have
there hell to pay.
Heads would have rolled.
Yeah, there would be hell to pay. So, what did you think of the episode? Your overall opinion?
I was screaming for more, which I think is a good sign.
Yes.
In general.
Yes.
I'm really impressed with this season overall. I want to reiterate how good the writing is, especially. I felt like everything that was set up in the first few episodes of the season has paid off perfectly. But they still managed to set up all these new dynamics and conflicts for season 2. So I thought it was a really good finale. I think more than anything, we got like the birth of the Sisi myth. We've been talking about it since the first episode of like how this narrative got started. And then we got the main 3 characters of Elizabeth, Franz and Sophie. They all have certain archetypes in the imagination of the public. And I think we're watching how these complicated people came to become cliches in like the imagination of the people. There's a sense in that last shot that the public persona of Sisi was being born because it was like she was becoming something larger than life, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Makes total sense.
What did you think?
I thought it was brilliant. I looked at the running time of it before I got started, and I was like, an hour.
Ooh.
How are they going to do this in an hour? And
they
did, man. They put more stuff into an episode than I thought was possible in a 1 hour time frame. I thought the storytelling was beautiful. The scenes that really got me, I think one of them is the one that you had posted something in Instagram today about Sophie's line regarding weak men. And like I said, when I saw that scene, I immediately was like, damn! Damn! Sophie, you just basically cut him off at the kneecaps. And again, the song Unbelievable. Just pounding in my head. Yeah, I mean, that was amazing. The takedown of Max, I think we all know was long in coming, and desperately needed. My main concern is that there has been a little seed of doubt planted in Franz's head about whether or not Elizabeth has slept with Max. So, with her announcing that she's pregnant, is that little tiny mention going to wind up blowing up into something really ugly in season 2? We'll have to wait to find out. But yeah, this was as the kids say, a banger.
I mean, so much happened. We need to talk about storylines, but I think we could break down, because each character had their own thing going on. It was so complicated. First off, obviously, Elizabeth. I mean, she started off in such a messy place.
Yes.
Stumbling around drunk. It reminded me a lot of her father in the first few episodes.
Oh my God. Yes.
And I was like, hating it, but then I was like, she's just mimicking learned behavior in a sense. But it was just so uncomfortable to watch. I felt so bad for Franz when he's just sitting there eating his breakfast and she like walks into the door drunk. And then everyone
and then tries to like play it off, it's like, dude, you've already collided with the door. Ain't nothing you can do now to make them think that, oh, it was a mere accident and you're not just drunk off your ass.
It's embarrassing though. Like, you're supposed to be an Empress. You're looking like a fool in front of the servants. I always, that's my pet peeve. It's like, don't be acting messy in front of servants. It's embarrassing to the servants. Yeah. I think like over the course of the episode, like Franz was trying to make it work, and then midway through he was just like, there is nothing I can do to salvage this relationship.
Yeah.
You can't make someone happy if they don't want to be. Like, she has to find her own way as the Empress, and he can't make her happy. And we've been saying that since episode 1.
Yeah.
Like, we've said yeah. And we've been saying, like, they might love each other. They have just, like, I think there's just too many fundamental differences here to make it work.
Yeah.
So while that scene was, like, brutal for them, I actually appreciated that they were finally talking about that. Like, with 6 episodes in, you should maybe talk about that.
Yeah.
What did you think about her decision to leave the court?
I honestly don't think that she had any other choice. The alternatives that she was given were intolerable. And I think that she made the absolute right decision for her, a bird locked in a cage. And seeing her riding around trying to find a way out of the palace grounds was just heartbreaking. And I think obviously that set up, her mindset for what her choices were going to be. It's like, okay, you're going to be stuck in this place without any of the freedoms that you're so very used to. You're going to have to obey and comply with this lunatic archduchess who is bound and determined to make sure things are run a certain way. and you're basically going to be a puppet.
The thing I struggle with, though, is that she's like, oh, I feel stifled, I'd have no freedom, but she spent all night, like, getting drunk and partying, so it's like this contradiction of, like, yeah, she's had freedom in that life, and she sort of squandered it and made really terrible decisions to the point where people are now trying to, like, stifle her even more.
Yeah.
So it's like this contradiction of, like, she sort of created this problem for herself, and other people are just heightening it. And I definitely was like, she's making the right decision. She needs to leave. Like, this is like a fundamental problem that you can't give her a horse and suddenly she's happy again, friends. Like, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
But then she makes the decision to stay, essentially. And I'm like, okay, it's altruistic in the sense that she wants to help the people and she's like finding a purpose. I think the episode was about that for her. It starts off with her father saying, like, you wanted to find a purpose, and I think she's finding it at the end.
Yeah.
I just think it's interesting that she's not really doing this of her own volition. It's like it's done out of spite, which is fun. And she's sort of curating this sissy persona as a direct contrast to her mother-in-law. And I wonder if, like, that's going to end up being its own kind of cage as well, because it's not done out of anything other than spite and animosity. It's not like it's actually something that she wanted for herself, that she chose for herself. It's like Sophie is inadvertently manipulating people.
Yeah.
She's unintentionally sort of formed Elizabeth as like an entity in history.
Yeah.
I mean, Sophie's power is far-reaching and unexpected.
Far-reaching and terrifying. I mean, it makes you wonder about, the people that she has encountered during her time as Archduchess.
Right?
Yeah.
I think, low-key, I think Sophie might be more interesting than any of the other characters, because the way she wields her power is terrifying and sort of fun to watch.
I'm telling you.
The way she smacked down Max was amazing.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, I'm telling you, she reminds me more and more about, reminds me more and more of, what's her face? Lannister in Game of Thrones.
Cersei.
Yeah. Yes, Cersei. I mean, Cersei's power was mind-boggling, and this person could keep up with her.
Oh yeah,
no problem.
And she wouldn't have to fuck her twin brother to get the power.
No, ew.
Do you think Elizabeth will have more of a political role in season 2? Because so far she's sort of stayed out of it, and then I felt like with the last scene she was like, I'm here, bitch.
Yeah. I really do. I think that she is going to be finding her own power and discovering ways to wield it against Sophie, against basically anyone that she encounters. I think that she really doesn't have a choice but to become more political, especially, with her going out there and running around with the masses and stuff like that. I need to do some more, research or background around, the Sisi character.
Oh yeah.
And
you need to watch
persona.
The movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely going to be one of the things that I do while we're on break for the holidays.
Long hiatus.
Yes.
Actually, it's the perfect time to watch Sisi, considering that it's like the Christmas movie.
Oh.
So,
well, see, there you go.
One thing I kept thinking about, is the shot of Elizabeth at the end. I was like, this is a bit like she has a bit of a savior complex, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The way she was like touching people as if she was like a religious icon.
Yes.
I think like the way the show is so smart, I think it would have been very easy to portray that as some like unambiguous force for good.
Mm-hmm.
Of like, she's here to save everyone, guys. She sees them. But I think the way they shot the light on her face and her expression, it was sort of like this double-edged sort of thing where these people are starving and disenfranchised. And she's just saying, I see you. And like, how is that actually going to help them at the end of the day? You know, she sees herself as like saving the Habsburg Empire by promoting herself as like a caring overlord. I mean, if you're actually opposed to their suffering, then you would be opposed to the Habsburg Empire. Like, it's like, she's just like a different flavor of royalty. Mm-hmm. And the people don't need that. They need democracy, quite frankly. Yeah. Touching some peasants isn't going to do much good at the end of the day. No,
not quite. So this is a 3-movie series, huh? Mm-hmm. Alrighty.
Yeah. Don't watch the one that is just one. They did like an edited version where they stuck the 3 movies together. Do not watch that. Oh. Do not watch it.
How am I going to know which one it is?
The runtime, if it's probably.
Okay.
I'm so happy you can see it because I've been trying to rewatch it and they just don't sell it here.
Well, yeah, I will let you know. I'll take a look and let you know which ones are offered and available, and then we can go from there. I think one of them is distributed by Netflix, but it's not on their channel for some reason. But anyway, I have my homework.
Next up, Franz. Oh my god.
Oh,
what a day for Franz.
Franz is having a really, really bad day.
That should be the name of this episode. Franz's really, really bad day.
Really bad day. You know, and it's a day where, you know, honestly, he should be like rejoicing, because, you know, his strategy has worked and, you know, the Tsar is being intimidated just like he said he would be. And, you know, so it should be a day of rejoicing, but sure as hell gets off on the wrong foot. Eating breakfast all by yourself while your wife is out
kissing your brother, literally.
And the sweet moments when the two of them are together, and you could see the love that they have for one another. It just made me, you know, want to say, okay, all y'all just back up.
Leave them alone.
They need some time together. But no, you got Max and his conniving ass. Sophie and her,
also conniving.
Way too, powerful behind. You know, the only sweet one in the room is Ludwig. And Ludwig is
powerless to help him.
Yeah, such a sweet lad.
I felt like the whole episode he was on the verge of a nervous breakdown, which is like where he was like closing all of the windows and then like practicing his little swordsmanship because that's what he does when he's anxious. He's like, he has all this nervous energy. Like he can tell something terrible is about to happen, but he doesn't know. He
doesn't quite know what it is, and you know, it's like everybody's keeping all of this shit from him. You know, like the pregnancy, the fact that, you know, what he's been doing is having an effect. You know, all of those things.
I think, like, there's definitely a cliche of him being, like, the pushed around mummy's boy thing, but the show's doing such a good job of showing you, like, what the reality of that situation would have felt like, and the nuance that's often missing, and, like, there's the potential war with Russia, the coup, von Back trying to pimp him out. Don't forget that.
Yeah.
He's also trying to deal with Elizabeth Elizabeth's completely, like, Elizabeth's having her own meltdown and he feels responsible for her. And like, I have a lot of sympathy for the amount of pressure he's under, especially on the back of realizing he had PTSD last week. I just think like it's just too much for him to handle. And I think there's just like a very normal sort of crumbling of everything that he's tried to establish. So he's just like, I will listen to my mother then. And it's ironic because he's a better emperor when he doesn't listen to his mother, as evidenced by that win at the border.
Yes.
He has really good instincts. And, you know, it's funny when they were having that conversation in the chapel and Elizabeth says that the best quality in a leader is empathy. I was like, that's exactly what Franz has as a person. Like, he is very good at empathizing with people's struggles. He's not very good at showing it sometimes, admittedly, because he's scared. And Elizabeth does say, like, oh, you're frightened. But he got stabbed in the neck, Elizabeth, so... fair enough.
Big old freaking knife in his neck.
Like, the fact that he's even following her out into that crowd is such a moment for him as well. Like, I feel like if he just follows her lead, he could, like, truly kill it as emperor. But it remains to be seen why he was following her. Who knows? Maybe he's just going to be like, bitch, you're pregnant? Why didn't you tell me?
You better get back here, girl. Oh, yeah. What do you think you're trying to do? I love his acting. He did some amazing work in this episode. And we have no idea when season 2 is going to come out, do we?
I see on Instagram that the writers are currently working. They keep posting photos from the writers' room, and I see little post-it notes written in German, and I'm like, damn it, why did I learn French?
Oh man,
they're definitely working. So let's just like hope they start filming soon.
Yeah, and you know, it's like given how successful this first season was, there's a part of me that says that wants to say, okay, we're really desperate to know what comes next, but please don't rush. Don't rush.
Yeah.
Just, do what you need to in order to, kick this one, as clear out of the park as you possibly can. But don't take too long because...
Inject it into my veins. I need it.
We're desperate. We're desperate.
Yes. I mean, we're gonna have another busy year because there's season 3 Sanditon, and then the Queen's Queen Charlotte spin-off is in May, and then like the Bridgerton season 3. Like, oh my god!
Oh my god!
Maybe take your time, Empress.
Yeah, exactly. Let us get some recovery time from all of this drama.
Drama. Speaking of drama, the Queen of Drama. Sophie, I have an unabashed girl crush on her. I find her absolutely fascinating. I mean, last week we spoke about her unraveling. This week, she reached the end of her tether and she was like, I'm gonna grab onto the reins. And I appreciate the show's nuance in handling that, because in some aspects, like when she's handling Elizabeth, her instincts are terrible and she's awful at it. But then when she crushed Max's delusions like a bug, I was cheering her on.
God.
It's a double-edged sword.
That was just genius. Yeah, I think that I want more backstory from her, like her backstory. And it would be great to see how she came into being the powerhouse that she is.
Isn't it interesting that the Austrian public has really gravitated towards the Sisi character when I think maybe Sophie might be more interesting? She's got a lot more going on there.
Yeah, but Sophie doesn't give a rat's ass about the people. She doesn't.
I mean, yeah, she doesn't, and that's I don't blame her technically, considering how much, how often the people have tried to kill her and her family. Yeah. I would probably end up being the same, question mark. Like I said, like, I can't remember what episode it was, but the circle of violence thing, where it's like the violence has gone on so long that she started to like not see the people as people, and they've stopped seeing her as people. So it's just like a vicious. You can't blame the people for hating her, and you can't hate her for hating the people. It's just like it's a mess, and that's why you shouldn't have empires, basically. Yeah, but that scene where she calls all 3 of her sons unfit to govern, brutal, awful. I did giggle a bit at how mean she was being, right in front of their faces. But I was struck, like, she's basically moulded them to be completely useless politically, because without her, they have absolutely no agency. And she's done that so she can retain power and control over them. And she's now blaming them for not being as strong as her. And it's like, well, you did that. It's ridiculous.
It's like, well, who do you think helped them get this way, Missy?
It certainly wasn't the father that you basically locked up in a tower up in the woods. It's like a classic toxic parent dynamic, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Oh my God. She is just such a freaking piece of work. And, I'm sure that, Sophie would have been so happy if Elizabeth's sister had been the one to become Empress, because she could control her.
Oh, for sure. That's why she was picked.
Yeah.
But then I also, like, on the other hand, I am kind of sympathetic to the fact that she has all these ambitions and opinions, and this is a society that does not allow her to yield power in her own right. So she has to use her sons as pawns to get anything done. Obviously, she's using her power for evil, but if she was doing something, if she was like a really good, effective well, not Empress, but, Archduchess, and she was helping the nation or whatever, you'd be like, oh, that's brilliant. It's just that she's obviously wielding her power in a way that is really terrible and potentially harming people.
Yeah. The woman's toxic, man.
She is, but then it's like, how much is this is because she was made toxic by the society she lives in, It's complicated, and I like that the show has made her multi-dimensional, because I am like, damn it, I see your perspective, even though I do not agree with it,
Yeah.
But she's definitely like, she's very selfish, and she, like, the way she used and discarded Matron in particular, and like replaced her with a younger model was just... It reminded me, like, of a man. The things that we don't like about her, I think, would be more accepted in a male.
Yeah, more masculine, more stereotypically masculine characteristics, and would be seen as being much more acceptable. You can't be strong, opinionated. Or I should say, it's very difficult to be strong, opinionated, brash, leader if you're a woman, because you wind up having all of those misogynistic statements come back to bite you in the ass. It's like, oh, she's just bitch,
Exactly. And I think, like, part of why she's been set up as the villain versus Sisi's beautiful princess sunshine rainbow person is because she wielded power, and Sisi's power was more soft. She was like, she did PR, she went out and she shook people's hands, and she got pregnant, and she wields more of like a soft power,
right?
And I think that's more palatable to people in the long term. And I think that's why these cliches have been built up in, like, the public imagination over time. Anyway, Max's whole thing.
Maxie. I think it's about time you head on over to Mexico. Yeah, you need to get out of town. And maybe think about doing that whole emperor thing elsewhere.
Don't throw him on the people of Mexico. They don't deserve this either.
Well, that much is true as well.
I was finding him like more and more pathetic and sad as the weeks have gone on. At first I was like just angry and annoyed, and now I'm like, by this episode I was like, this is just sad. Like, you're not good at this.
Yeah, he is looking more and more pathetic as the episodes have gone on. And I think rightfully so. It's like, dude, you're plotting a coup against your brother.
He looked really sad when they mentioned that Franz would be taken care of, though. I was like, do you actually want to harm Franz? 'Cause I think what's happened here is that he's taken all the resentment he has against his mother and the way she stifled his ambitions, and then just blamed his older brother for it, because he's like, she chose Franz over him, and instead of blaming Sophie, he's like gone, Franz is the bad guy.
Yeah.
And I think in that moment where she's saying all of her sons are useless, he was sort of like, oh shit, she's the bad guy.
I get it now. Like, yes, Maxie.
Instead of trying to control an empire, he should have just gone to therapy, which doesn't exist yet.
Give it just a few more years.
Do you think he's going to end up being like banished or something? Because they made it look like he was being arrested, but there's like a 0% chance he's actually going to be hanged.
Yeah, no, they're not going to hang him. I think banishment sounds much more along the lines of what Franz is willing to tolerate, because at this point, I have to wonder whether or not Sophie would be totally okay with them stringing her son up. She seems to discard them easy enough, but I don't think that they would do anything beyond banishment.
I also wonder about what's going to happen to the rest of the cabinet as well, because the guy I was speaking to was like, you don't get it, our necks are on the line. You'll be fine. And I was like, but they can't get a whole new cabinet without admitting what's happened. So
yeah, exactly. It's going to be, it's a pretty interesting little predicament that they find themselves in. Thank you, Max.
Thank you, Max. Well, at least Max has like highlighted which guys they can trust and which ones they can't. And apparently they can't trust anyone apart from Von Bach. And even then, Von Bach's trying to pimp out his emperor. So
yeah.
I'm not even Team Von Bach anymore. I'm like, get away from him.
Franz is too precious. Don't mess with him.
I just don't feel like pimping anyone out against their will is chill. Like, just stop it.
It's not cool.
It's not cool. I guess the last main character is Leontine / Ava.
Yeah. There's some serious story happening with that character. I did not see the push off the balcony happening.
Really?
That was like, holy shit, girl, you did what?
Oh, you sweet summer child. I was screaming, push her. I was like, push her, push her, push her. And then she pushed her. The whole time. I was like, this is where I admit I'm a murderer. But that's what I would have done in that situation. Because you're absolutely fucked. This is literally the only way you get out of that situation. And she just happened to be standing next to a very high balcony. I was just like, this is the only solution.
It's like, oh, the heavens. Okay, maybe not the heavens are opening up. But boy, the path forward is being laid so splendidly for you. Here, just a little nudge.
The shot of them like running around running down the corridors of the palace, like chasing each other and yelling was really funny because I was like, nobody's seeing this?
It's like this kind of commotion would draw some attention. People.
Where is everyone as well? Well, they're probably all watching Elizabeth at the window or something. But,
gosh.
But just generally, I just want to say, like, when this plot first started in episode 1, I was like, what is this bullshit about the revolution? But it's really been so fun. I really enjoyed it. And it's really added like an important layer to the show, and as like it's reminding everyone that there is a world outside of the court. And I love the Ava character, even though she is a fucking murderer. She was like, I'm not a murderer. As soon as she said she wasn't a murderer,
yes, you are.
As soon as she said it, I was like, oh, she's gonna murder someone this episode.
It's like, oh yeah, that was a tell if there ever was one. I'm not a murderer. Just you wait, Henry Higgins.
But I mean, you could argue she also murdered Egon because she set that up.
Yeah, that was cold.
I mean, the irony of her saying she's not a murderer as she is setting him up to be murdered.
Oh my gosh.
That's the thing with the show. Like, it will make you like people, but then they do something and you're like, oh, you're a bad person.
It's like, yeah, wait, what? Oh,
and
no.
That's how I feel about, like,
too.
literally all of these characters. Like, there are obviously different gradients of bad, but, you know, this is, she killed 2 people in an episode. But
yeah. I think, it is one of the draws of this program that, we get these characters that are multi-dimensional. Within 6 episodes,
I know.
you see.
I'm so attached to them.
Yeah, you see just how complex they are, and you find yourself rooting for them. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Like, that's my emotional support, Franz. You will not hurt him.
Don't you harm a hair on his little chin.
But you can maybe take the moustache.
That thing has not grown on me. I will say that.
I do appreciate when they're like, we're going to give you an awkward period drama facial hair, because like when people are clean shaven, I'm always like, that doesn't work. That doesn't feel real,
And so he says, oh, I want a pencil mustache.
The fact that he's almost pulling it off, admittedly only almost, is
almost,
just almost. That shows you how handsome he is. Okay.
He is a very handsome man.
Motherhood is one of the themes I think we saw in this episode at play. Obvious, like that's so obvious. I'm sorry how cliche that is. There's sort of a lot of emphasis around Sophie as a mother this episode. And as we've spoken about in the past, motherhood, especially for an Empress, was a way to garner power and influence. When you were a woman, it was one of the only ways you could. And it was the only way that women could really have legacies that were sort of politically minded as well, because they didn't get to make decisions about so much. And I think we really see that in that final scene, because Elizabeth's own sort of private joy of her pregnancy is she then wields it to garner loyalty and respect from her subjects at a moment where they might kill her husband.
Yeah.
So she's sort of using it, her baby, who is like maybe like a couple of weeks old already, to gain political power. And if you think that Sophie previously did something similar with her own children, there's also like this sense that children are just pawns, and these children, they're not really individuals, not even to Elizabeth, because she's not thinking about like, oh, what's best for my child. She's just like, yo bitches, I'm going to use this to get power.
Yeah.
which is making me sad as I say it out loud. I'm like, that poor child.
Yeah. Ugh.
Not even born and already being wielded as a status symbol. You gotta love it.
Yep.
Leontine / Ava must be a mother as well, if you think about it. 'Cause she's a nursemaid.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
She's got to have given birth. I wonder what happened to her child. Oh, something tragic.
So, must be.
Season 2 flashback, maybe? Question mark.
Please,
tragic
please.
loss. Tragic loss of a child that has led her to become revolutionary. Ooh.
Oh, God. I want this show season 2 right now. And I suggest that we do the podcast whenever this starts running on Netflix. That's when we should do it.
Yeah, for sure. I can't believe we waited 2 months. Right, we only wait. It aired at the end of, well, it didn't air, but it was like uploaded at like the end of October. So we waited a month.
Yeah.
It's not too bad.
It's just not it's just not bad.
But we still waited a month longer than we had to. That was bad of us.
Yeah. So we will stop whatever it is we're doing to do this. Of course, now that I've said that, I'm gonna wind up regretting it. I just know it.
Be like midway through something important.
Yeah, midway through Sanditon, it's like, no.
No, because Sanditon is in March, so that will be done really, really close. That is really close. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah.
We got distracted again.
It's like 3.5 months. Nothing.
Okay, and also, like as we spoke earlier, Elizabeth's father was like, you need to find a meaningful path for yourself. And then obviously there was that scene where Elizabeth's on her horse trying to find a path, and then in the end she found whatever.
Yes.
That was obviously a theme. But I also noticed the reappearance of the straw doll, and I was like, oh my God, the shit I was spewing earlier kind of came back full circle.
Yes, it did.
Leontine lighting. The rebirth imagery was back, and the symbol of hope and fertility, and I was like, oh my God, what if sometimes I say things and they're actually correct, and everything.
You're psychic.
I just like that the show drops these little breadcrumbs, like this. Well, I think that was in episode 2, and then we're on episode 6, and it's like, yeah, bitch, we're bringing this back. We're bringing it back symbolically.
Well, it's kind of like She Who Must Not Be Named and the Potter series. When you've got references to Horcruxes, which you don't find out about until book 6. You've got references to them in the second book. It's like there's all these little breadcrumbs all through that series. And, as you're reading through it, you can find yourself going, oh, yeah.
Yeah, but then when I was reading through it after I'd read it the first time, I was like, why don't they just sit Harry down and explain what a Horcrux is?
Oh, it would be too much for him as a little kid.
I know, but maybe sometime before Dumbledore dies would have been helpful.
Yeah.
Why are we talking about this? I don't know.
Yeah, okay. Scratch that. Sorry. Back to the Empress.
Which is less transphobic, at least, because it has Ludwig in
the
dress.
Yes. And we bring it full circle. Yes. Okay.
Connections.
Oh my gosh. Well, what were some of your favorite scenes? I know we've mentioned a couple of them, but is there...
My absolute favorite was definitely the scene between Sophie and Elizabeth in the church, because the acting was just out of this world exceptional, and it was a really quiet moment, but really intense.
It was freaking beautiful. The costumes, and I know we're going to talk about costumes in just a second, but the costumes that were chosen for this episode were incredible. And the dress that Sophie is wearing with, what looked like waterfalls of silk.
Yeah. Mm.
When she sat down, she looked like she was the stamen in the middle of a beautiful flower. I mean, it was incredible. That was such an incredible scene. I think one of my favorite scenes was the scene where Sophie gives Max the dressing down that he so desperately needed to hear. Whether he takes it to heart is another thing. But yeah,
it looked like it. He was crushed.
Well, he'd first gotten like his lip busted open by his brother Franz, who, almost decked him with the blow to his face. And then, the next time we see him, we see Max with this great big raspberry on the side of his lips.
That was satisfying.
Only to be told, you not leadership material.
They've been trying to tell him all season.
Yeah, they really have. Max asking him, not Max, Franz asking him, are you sure you want to come to court? And you sure about that?
I loved the moment where Franz realizes that he's trying to stage a coup, and his response is to just laugh. He's like,
yes.
That was such a sick burn. I was like, okay.
There were some really great scenes in this episode.
Do you have any least favorite scenes?
The theme that broke my heart, oddly enough, the scene with Matron's wig.
Yeah.
And
Matron.
And its dismissal. It was like, oh my God, woman, get up off the floor. Just get up off the floor. This is not helping your situation one bit.
It's sad. That was
because if anything, you should know that Sophie doesn't tolerate weakness. Period. And you fleeing yourself on the floor, doesn't get too much better for a weakness portrayal than someone prostrating themselves on the floor and grabbing at your ankles.
But I think what's made it sadder is that she's not doing that out of respect for her. It's done out of love, because I think she loves this woman that she served, and it's just sadder. It's like a breakup where Sophie's moved on, but Matron is still please love me again.
Yes.
It's just made so depressing. I was just and you can't blame. You can't blame her, because she's obviously dedicated her whole life to Sophie. And now it's being yanked away from her. Oh, it's sad. I felt bad for Matron, even though she's clearly a psychopath as well.
Yeah. She is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
But then again, Sophie made her that way.
Yeah.
Sophie is so powerful. She has
Sophie's at the root of all evil.
Yeah, but who made Sophie evil? That is why we need a backstory.
Yeah, true that.
My least favourite scene was when Amalia got pushed over the edge. There was way too much blood pooling out of her. I was like, that's sending me, because now I'm starting to think about blunt trauma impact onto the head and how much blood would be involved, and I don't want to think about that. But it was because what they did was they CGI'd it moving out of her body, and I was just like, don't do that to me.
Oh God. But I was really surprised when that happened. And I probably shouldn't have been.
No, because they were standing up next to a very high object There's a reason that wasn't done in a room. Okay. Favorite costumes and locations?
Well, I've already mentioned one of mine, the scene with Sophie in the church, having her conversation. I thought that was incredibly beautiful. The scene or the costume that she was wearing when she went horseback riding.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool. She's just out there and like the skirts were flowing and flapping like birds' wings.
Ooh.
Just flapping and carrying on.
Not the most practical horse riding outfit, though.
Yeah. This show knows how to beat a metaphor to death. I will say that.
I love that for us, though. I really liked her outfit when she's gone full Empress.
Yeah.
It was probably the most like regal looking dress that she's worn all season. And I thought it was interesting that she's leaving for home and she's been in this casual dress all episode, and then she puts on this big puffy imperial looking dress, and I'm like, that's the outfit you choose to leave in. I don't think she really subconsciously I think she knew she wasn't leaving. Yeah, because there's no way. You've seen her traveling outfits before. It was definitely like a display of empressness.
Display of empressness. I love it.
Her gloves and everything. Like, it was just like she was on show. One thing that I noticed was that Max, you think about the way he was dressing when he was first introduced in the first episode. It was quite like a flamboyant sort of party boy outfit. And then I noticed this episode, he was wearing like this naval version of Franz's outfit, like he was cosplaying being emperor. He was like, what it would be like to be conservative.
Yes.
And I really noticed this in the scene where he was fighting Franz. Franz spent most of, a lot of the episode in like his casual white shirt and like raging around the episode, looking distressed. And then he puts on his little uniform right after he's had this confrontation with his brother, and he's like basically putting on his little outfit on, like Elizabeth is like, now we are empire. Empress and emperor. Like, they're both, everyone's just like putting on a little show of who can be the emperor. It's really quite silly. Yes. When you think about it, it's like, oh, you have to put on your little outfit on and then you have power. Okay. It's like Power Rangers.
Okay, now I get it. Interesting idea. Well done.
They really do. But I just like the way that the costuming sort of reflects where they are psychologically, especially. Like, it all feeds in and everything is important. I love that. Oh, performer of the episode.
Sophie?
Yes. I agree.
Yeah. I mean, everybody was awesome, but Sophie was next level.
That scene, like I said, that my favourite scene where she's explaining to Elizabeth about holding her daughter while she was dying. That was just sensational acting.
Yes.
And really moved me. And I think it really grounded some of the later Disney villain stuff she does. She really sachets out of rooms in this episode, and I love that for her.
She does. She's fantastic.
It's like such a well-rounded performance, and she creates like this person that you can believe in that is both like performatively evil and also suffering inside. So amazing.
Yeah. Just tour de force acting, and she really took it this episode for me. How many birds?
Oh, 5. We're going 5, right?
Of course. I mean, this was about as good as television can get.
Like, so impressed with this whole show, and I wish more people would watch it, but what can you do? Yeah.
Except, just say, just embrace the subtitles. It's okay.
Please.
Hit the pause.
I know like 50% of the people said that they were watching it with dubs on on the poll that I did. But
Yes.
I'm telling you guys, please, it's so much better. It's so much better.
Give one episode a try. And, you know, I think you'll be convinced. I still have to laugh every time Max speaks, you know, with his voice. This is way up here. It's like, oh my God, slow down, man. The guy that they got to do his dubbing was much more chill.
And that's why it was wrong.
I admit it. I agree. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Now everything is right with the world. Let's go into inbox.
Yes. We got a bunch of emails this week, so thank you very much, everybody, for sending in your thoughts. This is from Juliana. This episode is interesting in terms of parallels, namely Elizabeth and Max. He thinks because he breaks rules that he stands apart, a man of the people, as it were. And he thinks that's what Elizabeth wants. Throughout the season, he's tried to cast himself in that part, but mostly, especially here. What happens, though, is that she starts to become in reality, through her interactions with the actual people, not just the moody rich, what he imagines he already is. Their interactions are always fascinating, and they're individually great with Franz. Hope we get more next season. Yes, ma'am. Definitely hope we get more of that this season. And
I do find it interesting that Max is claiming to be the most popular one, and then like we've literally never seen him interact with anybody from the lower class.
Oh God, Max, you delusional boy.
Email said, "Hi Rita and Michelle. I'm sorry, but was anyone else just feeling anxious during the entire episode?"
I'm raising my hand. You can't see me, but I'm raising my hand.
Sophie's on the warpath, taking anyone and everyone down. Firstly, matron Nastasi, she has failed with keeping Elizabeth under control and facilitating her getting pregnant, and apparently all the people gathering at the gate are her fault too.
Yeah.
I think matron will be rereading her job description next time.
Mm-hmm.
She's to be punished by being removed from court and Sophie's side and sent away with Elizabeth. The horror of it. Not by him. Then Elizabeth is in Sophie's sights. She tells her she is a failure, also highlighted by her father's letter to her, and is distracting Franz. She isn't the shimmering light that they want or tried to mould. Just a drunk party girl.
Oh, damn.
Accurate.
Mm-hmm.
She must go. Forever banished back to Bayern. What will become of her? Oh, the most delicious is Sophie's takedown of Maxie. After he has the gall to suggest he would be a better leader than his brother, she just spits venom at him. He would be hopeless as emperor. In fact, none of her sons are suitable to be emperor. Poor Lutzi in the background. And she will not allow them to destroy everything she has built. By the way, Maxie, is that a cold sore developing on your lip? Must be the stress. And by the way, in case you didn't listen in church, thou shalt not covet your brother's wife.
Yeah.
Many exclamation marks. After all, there are only 10 commandments to follow. Really, the Archbishop was right. What does he stand for? Christianity, that's for sure. Pretty sure Sophie's thinking the phrase, never send a man to do a woman's job at the moment.
Yup.
Sadly, nothing is really improving for our Emperor and Empress. Both seem to be failing at their roles. Franz is still obviously besotted with his wife, but finding it more difficult to love her, but he's trying. Horse gift. Even as his mother continues to diss Elizabeth. But the last straw is when Max confronts him about his takeover plans, which Franz shuts down. But then Max really cuts him when he suggests Elizabeth is now his. Liar!
Liar. Mm-hmm.
Elizabeth is just losing her self-respect and getting deeper and deeper into self-loathing, but there's one little glimmer of hope. A baby. But in her stubbornness and argument with Franz, she doesn't tell him. She decides to send this message through the people gathered at the gate. Can't wait to see how this goes. Yeah. POV. Sophie's blue ruffled dress and Elizabeth's gown she wears when leaving the palace. Stunning. This show must win awards for costume. Oh, and the music's fantastic too. Bring on season 2, although I hope the stress levels go down a bit. Ciao, Maria.
Thanks, Maria.
Oh, agreed.
Yes. Dearest podcasters, when I watched this for the first time, I was so shocked when it ended. It seemed like there should have been more. It definitely left me wanting more, and at the time I didn't know there was going to be a second season. It seems like were a lot of loose ends and unresolved storylines. Maybe that is why my overall feeling of the series was not as positive as it is now. I felt unfulfilled or unsatisfied, but now that I know there is a second season, I liked it much better. As I watched this episode the second time with German audio and English subtitles, good suggestion, you guys. See?
Right.
See?
Was it a suggestion or did I bully everyone? Was it?
I was surprised how much didn't happen in this episode. It seems like they dragged out the ending. Elizabeth leaves at what seems like halfway through. It just takes forever for her to get out of the gate. The weird thing about
She's there for like 20 minutes.
Yeah. The weird thing about this is that the whole episode, everyone is looking out the window and seeing all these people at the gate. Then when Elizabeth and then Franz goes out there, it takes forever and there seem to be 2 gates. How could they see people from the palace castle? Question mark?
The geography is weird. Don't think about the geography.
Yeah.
Never think about the geography.
You, of course, are one to talk, Miss. This doesn't look anything like Sophie. Anyway.
Sanditon makes no sense, though. Sanditon is more than a gate. It's like, what is happening?
Okay. Speaking of gates, the email continues. Doesn't Leontine tell her boyfriend to go through a different gate that is not guarded? Huh? Why would they have a way to get into the palace that is not guarded? It also
She
seems...
never says that, technically.
Yeah. It also seems that every time Leontine goes to meet him, she just goes through the woods anyway. Like, doesn't he know doesn't he know there is a place where she gets out that is not guarded? Also, if you're going to kill Franz to start a revolution, wouldn't you really need to kill Max too? And possibly the cute littlest brother?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you send more than one guy to do the killing? I hope Rita can explain this plotline to me. I do enjoy watching Leontine and actually ship her with the accountant guy, but she seems to be on very shaky ground for next season.
He's obviously getting in by pretending he's a servant all the time. And you would think, like, a palace that size, it would need to be staffed by quite a lot of people, and they would have deliveries for food and things. I think it would be quite easy to fake your way in. Because it's not like people have ID cards, you know. You can just be like, yeah, I'm a baker. And then just sneak
badge.
out. Yeah. But obviously, the plan to just kill Franz and start a revolution is stupid. Like, I do not disagree.
My favorite scene was Sophie squashing Maxie and his treasony plan like a bug. Yes. Yes. Here's another question for you. Why did anyone go along with it? Were the minions afraid of him or just stupid?
Stupid.
Stupid.
My vote would be stupid, yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody's afraid of Max. Who's seen him?
Can't wait to hear your thoughts about the episode and the season overall. And of course, what song you will put at the end. Your faithful listener, Carol from Connecticut.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Carol. Last email? Is this the last? This is the last email.
This is the last one.
Okay. Dear Michelle and Rita, I'd like to share some thoughts regarding the Empress as a Hungarian person who grew up watching the fairy tale version of Sisi with Romy Schneider every Christmas. Despite the fact that since about the 18th century, Hungarian history consists of nothing else but uprisings against the Habsburg dynasty, Sisi is still quite popular even today. According to pop culture, she was accepted as Queen of Hungarians because she was sympathetic to the oppressed position of Hungary and supported the Hungarian nobility to reach some kind of autonomy in the Austrian Empire. She liked to spend time in Hungary. Several places claim today they were her residences. She learned the language a bit and supposedly even had an affair with a viscount after her life at court became unbearable. Though originally she was in love with Franz Joseph, potential spoilers, their marriage slowly deteriorated as Sophie made her life hell. For example, she did not let Elizabeth spend time with her own children, and Franz did not stand up to Sophie. Ugh. Elizabeth tried to escape the strict court, travelled a lot, and turned to extreme beauty and weight loss practices to somehow survive. I'm writing this without any serious research, and it's just what I remember from some places I've visited or women's magazines which write about her regularly. So in my head, Elizabeth is a tragic heroine. Sophie's the devil, and Franz a mummy's boy, who could not stand up to Sophie. At first, I did not even want to watch this series because I did not want to see another fairy tale or a very depressing story of how the strict rules of the court ruined some lives. But I changed my mind when I saw on Instagram that you would review this show. I decided to give it a chance. Winky emoji.
Thank you very much.
I've watched it only till episode 3 yet. And on one hand, I enjoyed it a lot. The actors, the scenery, the locations, the costumes, the language. On the other hand, I cannot stop screaming, this is not going to end well. So I find it quite frustrating. That is always going on in the back of my head, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Like, seeing Sophie and Franz more human is quite fun. Franz is absolutely adorable. When on the wedding night he lays down on the floor, I almost wept. He's just so sweet. Elizabeth is great, but it's so heartbreaking. It's hard to watch. Just the day before the wedding, it was crazy that Franz was going on normally about his day, which was no doubt very challenging politically, but at the same time, Elizabeth was literally being tortured.
Yes.
There's no love that would survive that. Also, I'm feeling slightly offended. Crying emoji.
Yeah.
Or laugh cry emoji. It's really hard to tell. Hungary was not even mentioned so far. Yeah. I know compared to Russia or France, Hungary is insignificant, but in Hungarian history, the 1848 uprising and war for freedom against Austria is one of the major events. It also explains the next scar and why Austria needed Russian support when Franz became the emperor. Oh, well, you're only on episode 3, so you're going to enjoy 4 and 5. They do get into that a bit.
Yeah.
Overall, I'm glad to watch this, even though I'm afraid of a terrible ending. But I know with the help of your podcast, it will be easier to process it. Winky emoji. Thank you for all your work. It's always a pleasure to listen to you during my walks or in the car, waiting for my kids after their various trainings. I wish you wonderful holidays, kind regards, and this is Vicky from Switzerland. I'm Hungarian, but I live in Switzerland for 10 plus years.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you, Vicky. It's really interesting to have insight from somebody who grew up with the myth that we keep talking about, but it's very strange because it's sort of like secondhand mythology to me, because I'm like, I did not know about this bitch.
Yeah. Oh, man. Oh, gosh. Well, gang, that's all from us this time. We're going to be taking a little break over the holidays, but we will be back in the new year with a book club podcast where we will discuss the novelization of the Empress series by Gigi Griffiths. We hope that you can join us, and if you have opinions on the book and would like them to be read out in our inbox section, then please email us at inthebooksnetwork@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at inthebooks. But please remember to rate and review and share the podcast with your friends. We're kind of all over the place these days. So, if your platform is Apple, if it's Spotify, if it's YouTube, because we on YouTube now. And I know there's a whole bunch of other ones. Please.
I use Pocket Casts.
Please share these with your friends, and so that we can see the podcast reach more folks out there. We know you're out there. We'll find you.
You cannot escape us.
You cannot. Best wishes to you and yours this holiday season. For those of you that find the holidays to be a little difficult because of life circumstances or the remembering the people that you've lost, our hearts are with you.
Listen to our podcasts. They will distract you.
Yeah, you'll laugh like crazy because we are just a couple of geeky gals who
watch The Night Before Christmas with us. It's honestly one of the weirdest times we've ever had on the podcast.
Yes. Anyhow, you all take care. Happy holidays, and we'll see you in the new year. Bye.